Okay, good evening everyone.
Good evening.
Good to see a great turnout and wishing you all a fantastic 2018. Our session today is very special for me because this is the man that actually got me into entrepreneurship. So it's a very little known fact, but many moons ago when I was a lowly chartered accountant from the UK, working in Bucharest, Romania, as you do, I met him, and we'll go into that story. So I'm really, really pleased to have you here, Mike, and I know that you're going to be able to really share some fantastic stories. So before we get started, I just want to ask you, as the audience, a few questions. How many of you are first-time entrepreneurs? Can you just put up your hand? Okay, great. How many of you have kind of tried once and it didn't work and maybe are second or third time entrepreneurs? Okay, great. How many are in the corporate world and thinking about entrepreneurship? Okay, cool. So we've got quite a good mix, but a lot of first and second and third time entrepreneurs. If I give you the statistic 3% when it comes to entrepreneurship, any idea what that 3% would represent? That absolutely 97% of entrepreneurs fail. And the reason why myself, Kiran, and the rest of us who are members or charter members of TiE are members is because we want to ensure that our Pune ecosystem of entrepreneurs are in that 3%, right? So that's our aim. So when Mike and I were talking about the story that we're going to tell tonight, which is his story, I said to him, I want you to be as brutally honest as possible, and you're going to see that's very easy for him. He really doesn't mince his words. I really want you to talk about the failures. I want you to talk about what made it work, knowing when to stop. I really want you to tell the story how it is, because we know we've known each other for over 20 years. 23 you corrected me on earlier. So let's get started. I want to start with your first entrepreneurial venture ever.
Well, when my dad was 49 years old, I'm now 50. I wanted my dad to retire when he was 50. So what my dad did is he got some equipment from work to drill holes in cement and to cut concrete. And it was a concrete quarrying and sawing business. So my dad had a full-time job with the city. So what I did when I was 16 years old is I got on the phone, I started calling contractors, and I asked for work. And I got my dad a bunch of jobs to do in the evening. And what happened is I got my dad so many jobs, he had a choice. He could either retire and go into business with me, or he could keep his job. Well, he chose to keep his job. But that was my first venture, and it was frustrating for me because I wanted my dad to do this with me, but my mom wanted my dad to have a nice, safe pension. So one of the things when you're an entrepreneur, you have to make a decision. Do you want the safe, easy route? It's not the entrepreneur route. If you want the nice, steady income,
And the pension.
And the pension, well, you may have it if you are very successful. You may have a couple of challenging years.
So yeah. And one of the things, I mean, you were 16 and you were ringing up, you were cold calling.
Exactly.
So how did you have the guts to do it?
I didn't really think about it, I just did it.
And how has that helped you in your entrepreneurial journey over the last 20 years?
Well, to be honest, I didn't really know much about the business, so I kind of faked it till I made it.
So that's one thing. Entrepreneurs fake it until you make it. That is, I think some people think that's not the right thing to do and you should be ethical and integrity right from the beginning. But to be honest, to be able to take certain opportunities, a client will come along and say, can you do this? And you have to know that you knew your dad would be able to do the job.
Exactly.
What you were faking is whether you understood what it was that was needed.
Exactly.
Yeah? So fake it to make it. Okay, anything else?
Not to be afraid, and it's quite nerve-wracking to get on the phone and call people. I think the hardest call is the first one. It's the first few seconds. Once you start talking, it's easy.
Yeah.
It's what you're going to call. You're thinking, what am I going to say? And what if they hang up on me? And then eventually you just say, forget it. Just keep calling.
Yeah, cool. So you did that when you were 16, and
Yeah.
then obviously entrepreneurship was in your blood because you didn't wait too long before you did your next thing, which was door-to-door selling.
Correct. So when I went to college, they had an ad in the paper for summer jobs. One of these ads doesn't tell you very much, and I thought, okay, I'll go along. So they convinced a bunch of us when we were 20 years old to jump in a car, to drive halfway across America. So I lived in California, went to Memphis, Tennessee for a training course, and I ended up my first summer in Michigan. And I sold encyclopedias door to door.
Do you remember that business? Yeah.
Now, that's hard. Because when you knock on people's door, they tell you lots of not very nice things.
But you told me some really interesting stories about you'd go to this big house that looked absolutely fantastic, and you'd go, they're definitely going to buy, and then...
You get into a very wealthy person's house, and they give you a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. They're very nice to you. You think, oh, I got a big sale here. And they would buy the smallest item that you have, the cheapest thing. And then you get to someone who's not very well off. You think, okay, well, I'm just having a break. I'm just bored. I'm knocking on doors all day and someone to talk to. And they'll buy everything. And what you really, and it happens now with my current business, is you never know who's going to buy it.
Yeah.
I was at a convention for my current business with Arvin last year, 18 months ago. And I said, well, should I go approach this one big company? I go, well, they're so big, what's going to happen? Today, they're our biggest client. And at that time, I just thought, I just went up to talk to them, and and it's kind of hard, because you just winged it.
So keep pushing is what it taught you, and you obviously had targets and everything that you had to meet. So was that one of the things that you learned about business?
Well, there it was, what we learned with selling books is control what you can control. So there it was all about how many doors you knock on a day. So our biggest statistic we kept of is the number of doors to knock on. What we used to do is we used to have to knock at our first door, not at 8 o'clock, but at 7:59. The mentality was, so you always were at work just before 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you had to keep track of how many doors you knocked on. Because that's what you can control. You can't really control how many yeses, but at least keep knocking.
And I remember you telling us that, and I remember we lived in Bucharest in Romania, which we'll talk about a bit later, but one of the after he told me this story, I started to think about, because I had to do a lot of the selling, he looked after a lot of the operations, and I remember working out what times it was likely that my clients would answer the phone and not try and get me off the phone. So it was never before 10 o'clock, because nobody ever turned up before 10 o'clock, and it was never close to 5 o'clock because they were always thinking about going home, and it was never near lunchtime, so it was generally between 10 and 12:30 that, so all of this knowledge, you may think it's useless knowledge. You need to go back into your past and think about what worked, what didn't work, and then look at how you can implement it. And it might just be, your parents getting you into a schedule. You kind of think, oh, well, that wasn't very useful, but perhaps it is. So making the most of it. Okay, so we did the door-to-door selling. And then after that, at university, you decided you were going to be a CA, or
Correct.
a CPA, as they say in the States. Why did you decide to become a CPA?
Well, to be honest, I thought, if I'm going to go to college and learn something, I want to make some money. So what I did is I said, what's going to give me the best salary? That's the quickest to do. And I thought, okay, I'll be a CPA. And what I liked about it is that you guys go to people's business and see what they did. You got to see the inside workings. So, I mean, it wasn't really, it was just a salary. I was like, oh, I have no idea what I want to do.
Yeah.
This one has a nice salary.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So good salary, but also the opportunity to go in and look at different businesses.
Different businesses and see other people's numbers. It's very interesting.
Yeah. And at that time you were living in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And then you decided to go abroad. So where was the first place and why?
Well, what happened is I did a semester in London.
Okay.
And when I was in London, we did all these trips, my first time outside of the U.S. And to be honest, a lot of Americans don't travel that much. And the first time I traveled, I don't really know that much about the rest of the world. So we were on a train with a friend of mine at that time in college, and we met someone who said he was from South Africa. So me and my friend looked at each other and said, South Africa? You don't look African to us.
He was a white South African.
He's a white South African.
Now you've got to remember the date. Tell them the
This
date.
is back in
80.
No, this is back in 1988. So there wasn't really, the internet.
It wasn't the internet.
It wasn't the internet.
It
There's no
exists,
internet,
you
Yeah,
know.
it's not like I didn't really know who Nelson Mandela was or about apartheid. I was a kid. I didn't care about that kind of stuff. It was out of my mind. So you meet this white South African and go, this sounds kind of strange. And then we kept in correspondence. And then what happened is I asked him to arrange me a visa to go to South Africa. So his dad arranged me a visa, gets me to South Africa. And then I applied for a job to work for an accounting firm called Deloitte. And I just thought, if I'm going to start off my career, why would I work in LA when your first salary is going to be low anyways? Let's go somewhere else. So I went to South Africa. It was a complete adventure. And to be honest, it's so much more fun to work in a country that's less developed. You learn so much more.
Yeah.
The U.S. is boring. Because after South Africa, I went back to the U.S. and I didn't like it. Everything was too structured. There's nothing to learn. In South Africa, everything was a bit of a mess. I mean, they had these mini states that were called homelands. So during the apartheid era, you had the country was South Africa, and the mini states, these homelands, what the white South Africans did is they had them run by the blacks. So it was their way to kind of justify what they were doing. And I remember one of the homelands, when I was with Deloitte.
This is when I say to you, Mike is really honest, but remember we're on camera.
Okay. Well, we were in this, it was called Transguide. So it's with a company called South African Breweries, SAB, which is pretty big now. And this country was run by a dictator. His name was Halamisi, who's now very big with the ANC. So we have a staff party. Now what happened in South Africa in that generation is the whites and blacks didn't mix so well. And so at this party, I went up to the dictator, because he was there to open it, because he was a big guy. And I said, can I ask you a few questions? Now, no one would talk to him. He's all in his full army outfit. So I go, I have 2 questions for you. My first question is, are you racist? And he goes, well, why would you say that, sir? And I go, well, because in your country, white people can't own land. And he goes, no, we're practicing to be a democracy. Now, bear in mind, in South Africa, it was the other way around. The Africans had restrictions. So I was in this little area that's called a homeland. Now, my second question was, I have another question for you, sir. When I came into your country, I had to pay a tax at the airport. And I know it's a very poor country. And he goes, yes, that's right. And I go, well, they told me that the tax was because you need to have an expensive car. He had 3 Mercedes outside. And he goes, oh, no, those rumors aren't true. I go, well, if it's such a poor country, why do you have such an expensive car? And all the people, Deloitte's a very conservative accounting firm. And all my colleagues at Deloitte were like shocked. Like, what's Mike saying?
So, moral of this story is take risks. Take risks. You didn't get fired from
I
Deloitte.
didn't get fired from Deloitte.
Okay. And did anyone say anything to you?
Probably, yeah, I don't remember. Well, on the very first day of Deloitte, the partner that I worked for was Vasi Naidu. And did I tell you this story as well?
Yeah.
And my very first, his first question was, he goes, hi Mike, which group are you in? And I said, Vasi, I'm in your group, don't you read your memos?
So some people are more suited to be entrepreneurs than others. And I think Mike is brilliantly suited, as the following stories will come out. So anyway, after South Africa, you worked for Deloitte, and then you went back to the States,
Back to LA.
And you got bored
Yes.
because everything was
It
structured,
was too structured.
and so then you decided you wanted to go somewhere else.
Exactly.
And then what happened?
Well, Deloitte had a voicemail saying, do you want to work in Vladivostok?
So remember, this is at a time when there was no internet. It was not even a figment of our imaginations.
So I never heard of Vladivostok. But I
But
heard
then,
of,
I think you all know where that is.
it's in Russia.
It's the one end of Russia.
So back in in the early 90s, I said, okay, I'll go to Vladivostok. I knew Russia, I didn't know much about Vladivostok. And they came back and said, I'm sorry, Mike, that the job is taken. But how about going to Bucharest? So they said, okay, Bucharest. Well, what is that like? They go, well, where have you been in Europe? I was in Budapest. They go, it's the same as Budapest. Okay.
It really is not.
So the night before I'm flying, my mom gets the travel book. She opens it up. And the travel book, no, there's Budapest and Bucharest.
Okay.
Budapest is Hungary, which is a lot more modern.
Yeah.
And Bucharest is Romania, which had a lot of, it was a lot less wealthy, a lot of poverty issues, the orphans and everything. So the night before my flight, I knew nothing about where I was going, it's back. My mom gets a travel book and it says, Bucharest. When you get to Bucharest, the first thing you want to do is leave. It's a boring, dry city, it's super ugly. But the funny thing was, it had a charm because everything there was a challenge. It was an adventure.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Vandana. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember my first day of the job, you know, I went out to do auditing with Deloitte, and the audit people I was working with didn't even have instructions. They were just kind of guessing what to do.
Yeah.
And now I was young, I was 24 years old, or very young at that time, and I was just guessing as well. But I knew I had a little bit more knowledge of what to guess on.
Yeah.
And I think
And I think, you know, also, because you travelled, you'd seen how things were done differently as well,
Exactly.
right? Sorry, carry on.
So I think, you know, and what's exciting about that environment, when there's so much, like India, there's so much opportunity. Because in the US, everything is very competitive. And I think when you go to places like, you know, India or in Romania, when we were there in the 90s, there's so much opportunity to come up with ideas where you're going to be one of the, you know, it's not going to be so competitive that you just, you know, you get wiped out.
So one of the things was, you know, first of all, working in a very unstructured environment with people who didn't know totally what they were doing.
Exactly.
And the other was seeing the opportunities and working for one of the big four at that time. So you were with Deloitte, I was with Ernst & Young at that time. We got an opportunity to see companies coming in. We used to do the due diligence work to work out whether they should do the deal or not. So that must have been great experience for being an entrepreneur.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah?
We both had a good time at that.
It was quite mad. Okay, so then you moved to Ernst & Young, which is where we met many moons ago. And then, what was your first entrepreneurial venture in Romania?
Well, the first thing that I did is, when I got to Romania, I rented an apartment, and it was $600 a month. And that was expensive, because at that time, that was a lot of people's salary in Romania. That was more than people's salary. So I looked in the newspaper, and the apartment only cost $20,000. So what I did, and I was really told I was crazy about this.
And can I just say that he wouldn't be able to do it now, but back then it was absolutely legal.
I applied for 35 credit cards at the exact same time, and I got 35 or 30 credit cards. What I then did...
From America.
From America.
This wasn't from Romania.
From America. I then took money out of all those credit cards and started buying apartments. And now these apartments were $20,000, $25,000. And all my friends said, Mike, you're crazy. Why would you use credit cards to buy apartments in Romania? They just had communism. Now, at that time it was interesting because everybody said I was stupid. You're nuts. And then what was really funny is when you sell them at like 8 times what you paid for them, then you become lucky. So you go from stupid to lucky. And that's kind of the story of an entrepreneur. At the beginning, everybody tells you you're stupid, but when you're successful, they say, oh, you were lucky.
So this is, you're absolutely right, and this was the point. Honestly, I still remember that night. You came round to my apartment and you said, I've got this brilliant idea. And I was like, no. And you were like, you know, come on, you can come in with me and just pay part of your salary every month. And that's when the entrepreneurial bug hit me. I just thought, if I'm giving money up every month, it's like he's giving me a loan from someone he's got a loan from, you know, wherever, and let's see what happens. And we made our money back within a year, I think.
Well, the first apartment we had, I bought one by myself and we bought one together with Vandana. I think we spent 20 on the apartment, we spent 20 on renovations, and we rented to the U.S. Embassy for $20,000 for the first year.
Paid up in front. Paid in front.
This was the early 90s.
So this is when we obviously thought we were the bee's knees at entrepreneurship, right? And so then we had these great, fantastic, secure jobs at Ernst & Young.
So then I went to Vandana's house, and I kind of do what I want to do. So I get to her house, and she's with her fiance at the time. So the couch was a bit uncomfortable, so I decided I'm going to just lay on the floor. So I lay on the floor, and she has to tell me on some great TV show back then. I don't know what it was.
Married with children.
Was
Wasn't
it?
I remember.
And then we started just talking, and I think Dora thought I was crazy. Fiance thought I was crazy, probably.
Yeah, we just basically talked about the fact that our staff really didn't know what they needed to do, right? Working for Ernst & Young. Our staff were not trained to be able to do what they do.
So we had this idea, because what was needed there was a qualification for accountants. And so in the US we do a CPA. In the UK they do something called ACCA, or Chartered Accountant here in India. So we thought Ernst & Young, because Vandana was getting materials from the UK, so that people at Ernst & Young can be trained to do accounting. And it was very common for the firms to send their staff to do training courses. So we had this idea, why don't we try and train the accountants for the Big Four? Now I was to be cautious, my idea was, when she kind of made a mess of it, was I'll keep my job, so we have a stable income, you quit your job, and we'll use some of my income so at least you have some safety there. So okay, fine, so she quits her job. She's very good at marketing, so she gets all of this work. She says, Mike, we have a problem. You have to also quit your job because we need both of us.
So, but the thing is, we were earning enough to be able to do that at that time.
At that time, but then we gave up our salaries.
Yes, we did.
Completely.
And then what happened?
And then we set up a training company. Now, the other problem is I didn't really know a lot of the subject material very well to begin with. Remember that?
Yes.
And I thought, oh, so the night before my first class, I just looked at the material and I thought I could just talk through this.
Yes.
Remember
It
that?
didn't go very well. His first class did not go very well because he was not well prepared.
And so the beginning, the problem was we were very stretched because we were hiring, we had to get office spaces, and we had to organize everything, and then we also had to do the work, and we really stretched ourselves.
Yeah, because we were doing the marketing. We found the place we were going to run the courses, and we were also teaching. So we were being typical entrepreneurs. The challenge, obviously, when you're training is, if you don't deliver in the classroom, your reputation in all respects becomes a challenge.
Exactly. And so then we picked an office at the edge of the city. It was called Master Utsa to keep our costs down. The reality is we couldn't afford the city center, because at that point in time the rents were ridiculous, because there was a shortage of good offices. So we picked something that was really at the edge of the city. Remember the guy from Citibank?
Yeah.
He said, what are you guys doing way out here?
He said, you're never going to survive. Luckily, 6 months later, he ate his words, because we got a visit from a guy. So this is the time, as I said, before internet. So we used to have to fax our orders to the UK company that used to give us training materials. So we would fax them and we would get books from them, and then we would use those books to teach the students. And one guy...
Yeah, then James, well, what happened is, James Cooper was a chairman, was a very senior person. And I don't know who he was. Anyways, Vandana convinces him to fly over to Romania. So we get him to my apartment. Now, we had these really bad elevators, so I walked up the stairs, and I think I got
He
James to
lived
walk.
on the 8th floor.
I didn't
and he
like
walked up
elevators
the
because
stairs.
they were really, they always got stuck. So anyways, I get to the 8th floor, get James Cooper up there, and I didn't realize he was the guy who was making, you know, he was a board member of a listed company in the UK.
The largest European
Training company.
listed training company.
So he goes, I go, so tell me, James, what's your position? He goes, well, I'm the chairman. I go, James, I could also set up a company to be a chairman. What does that really mean? I mean, he goes, I can make the decisions. I go, well, okay, but I was a little bit cautious. And anyway, we convinced the company in London to give us a franchise to do a training company in Romania. So for the first 18 months, it was our own business. And then we got a lot of business in, and they wanted to buy us out. What they wanted us to do is to grow the business. So we went from just having it in Romania, we expanded into Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Slovakia,
Ukraine,
Ukraine,
Serbia.
So it was a pretty big adventure. So the idea was that they could buy us out, then they got her, she became my boss then,
Yeah.
and then we basically, I stayed in Romania and I had a little bit of struggles there.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And then she went off to set up all these other offices. And that's basically how we started that. And
So what was the reason they bought us out? What could they see?
growth potential.
Yeah. Because we'd done it in Romania, they knew that we could do it in other countries, which wasn't actually strictly true. Because each country in Eastern Europe is like a different state in India. So you have to get to know the nuances of each of those places before you go. And we had experiences in Switzerland and other places that weren't so good.
We went to meet in Switzerland, I'll never forget this, and she was my boss. So we get to a meeting, and because I'm the guy, and maybe because I'm white, I'm not sure, the guy just looked at me, he wouldn't even look at Bandana.
Despite the fact that he had my card, and actually, as soon as I gave him my card, do you remember what he said? He said, "You can't be the managing director of this company. Where's your boss? Is this your boss?" And I said, "No, my boss is the chairman of the listed company who sits in London."
Just like when you met Prince Charles, right?
Yes.
So she met Prince.
Let's not talk about that one. He gave me an OBE afterwards.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Okay, so let's go back. So you were in Romania. The Romania business actually did pretty well.
It did well, but I was in over my head. I didn't really know, I mean, I was winging it. There was staffing problems. We wanted to grow. And basically, then he fired me from there.
And that's the truth, I fired him. So we'd gone from being business partners to me being his boss, to me saying, "Mike, you're not running this business properly. You're having loads of trouble with your staff. We're worried about headcount. We need to take the count down. You're going to have to, by this stage, he was a brilliant trainer. You know, he used to get top marks in anything that he taught. And the other thing I have to say, you know, one thing I really admire about you, you never stopped learning. You did your CPA, then you did your CFA, then you did your ICAW, and then in between you did, or now what are you doing?
A VAT diploma.
A VAT diploma. I mean, always adding to his bouquet, and that's one thing I thought was brilliant. But I had to fire him.
What I did wrong there is, we took on too many things. So one idea we had was to do language training. So accounting training is a very high, expensive product. And to teach English is a much lower based product. And we tried to take on every possible thing, and that was a disaster. We didn't focus on what we were really good at. We tried to do everything. And so when I spread myself too thin, I had too much going on, and you don't want to fire people, because it's kind of fun to say I have a lot of people that work for me.
Absolutely, you know, at that time, the statistic in Eastern Europe that told you whether you were successful or not wasn't so much your revenue figure, it was how many people did you have. And that we know that from India as well, that's a question. And you know, one thing in my career I've made a point of doing, and I know you have too, is really being careful about the costs after that. And saying to people, don't ask me how many people I employ, ask me about my profitability, ask me about my margins.
Exactly.
Yeah?
So at that time, lots of things were gone wrong. And in hindsight, when I was fired, it was probably good because I was able to self-reflect. And when I went from Romania to Hungary, she let me set up APP Hungary there with her. I was able to kind of like fix all of my weaknesses in running businesses. What were my weaknesses?
So you know, it was such an interesting time. I knew from having worked with you that you were amazing and you were going to make it, but we just needed to polish these edges. So I mean, in terms of strengths, I think you're such a fun person to work with, and you taught me so much about the way you interpreted the figures. I mean, I was a chartered accountant, but you still helped me work out which markets I should go for, which markets I shouldn't go for. And you were willing to take risks that I was never willing to take. In terms of weaknesses, I think you know, the major challenge back then, which I know and your team will confirm, is you didn't see things from other people's points of view. Whether it was clients or whether it was staff. I think that was, somebody's laughing at the back. Well, that was a major challenge, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah? But I think, you know, when you joined BPP in Hungary, this was like intrapreneurship, which a lot of the large companies do. So it was like, you know, giving him another business to kind of incubate and get right on a small budget, and you did a fantastic job.
And then we had this, an email, we had email in it.
Yes.
An email from a Mr. Rao. And then Mr.
Yes.
Rao's from Hyderabad saying, I want to send some students to India. I mean,
No,
sorry, to Hungary.
Hungary.
Now, at that time I was thinking, because all the Indians I came across were really, really smart. So I was expecting to have all these really super smart Indian students come to Budapest who were going to want to study. Well, what actually happened is we had 4 or 5 super smart people, and we had 45 people that had degrees that were probably fake. They have engineering degrees from Osmania University in Hyderabad, I remember this. And, and I remember all these degrees and people saying, okay, you're in a basic math class to do accounting, and you have an engineering degree. This doesn't make any sense. So that's how I got the connection to India. So of the 5 bright students I had, that's when I met one of them. He's back in the room, they're kind of hiding.
Arvind, stick up your hand. That's it. Go stick it up. That's Arvind.
Arvind. Now, he's actually smarter than me. He's great to work with. So what happened is I said to Arvind, I want him to be an intern. And the day I offered him a job, I offered him 50,000 forints, which was, I don't remember how much. It wasn't that much. But anyways, I thought to myself, if I'm going to give this guy a chance, I'm going to pay him as little as possible and prove himself to me. And the day I offered him a job is when his mother went to the temple to pray because he was out of money and he was going to get a ticket to go back to India. So anyways, he argued for another $20 for me, a month's salary or something at that time. And eventually I said, okay, fine. Now actually, in all fairness to him, his calculations were what he needed to live on, and yet it wasn't actually very much. So at that point in time, he became my intern at BPP. And that's just right around the time when Vandana was moving back to India to set up her business, which was get-through guides. So I became Arvind and I worked quite well because he used to prepare my PowerPoints and help me get on running the business there when Vandana left. And then my next idea was, I was in the US and my aunt worked for a company that did debt collections for doctors in California. And I read some articles because I was teaching, but I never did it. So I read some articles about outsourcing. I go, okay.
So this was when? What year was this? 2003, 4?
2004,
Yeah.
I think. I get the year.
Arvind, 2004?
2004.
Yeah.
2004. So then I spoke to myself, let's try this outsourcing thing. So I went into my aunt and I met her boss. The boss's name was Gladys. And I said, let's try this. I got this great guy. He's Indian. He's really smart. We'll get him to come to the U.S. He can do training. We'll set up this company called Turnaround. And so everybody agreed. So, okay, the next step obviously was Arvind needs to go to the U.S. That's easy, right? You just apply for a visa. So knowing Vandana, I thought her connection would be a big help.
Yeah, I'm a Brit, remember?
Yeah, she's a Brit, but she knew all the top people. And one of her very close friends was a guy named Cesar, right? Who worked at the U.S. Embassy. So I thought, so me and Arvind go and meet Cesar for lunch. And I'm thinking, embassy, he's super high up there, of course we'll get a visa. So Cesar says, oh, no problem, it's a valid business you want to do. Americans want you to come to the country to help you out. So then Arvind goes in for his first visa interview, and it was rejected. And I was angry. So I went to the US,
You don't want to know my anything.
so I went to the U.S. Embassy in Budapest, and I went inside, and I wasn't very polite. I'll put it like that. I made a big noise, and I felt like just because I'm not Bill Gates, you won't give me a chance. Let me try this. They said no, he doesn't qualify. So anyways, I got angry. So I got on the phone, and this is for the U.S. to get a visa interview. It's not so easy. So I had a visa interview, I think like this week, and then I got on the phone to the embassy because they said, well, you have to call the embassy in India. I got on the phone to the embassy, I think it was in Chennai, And they said, okay, we can see him next week on Wednesdays. This is like 4 days from now. So I called Arvin that night and said, Arvin, you got a visa interview next Wednesday in the US.
No, Chennai.
And so in Chennai, in India. So he's in Hungary. He's been there for a year, made a lot of friends. And he's all, okay. So he goes to me, when do you want me to go? Well, I go, why don't you go tomorrow? I think I gave him 2 days notice. So he had 2 days notice. He packed his bag. He gets to the embassy in Chennai, and the embassy was horrible. They don't even look at you. They're very rude. And they said, I'm sorry, it's rejected. And I was angry again. So what I did this time was I got on the phone again, and I got another visa interview 3 days later, which is pretty unheard of. And that time they were polite, and they explained very nicely, I'm sorry, you're too young, you don't have any ties, you might go to America and you might stay, Mike's older than you, it doesn't look like you're a genuine partnership, this doesn't make any sense, we just don't believe it. So the visa idea was out the window. So now he just quit, he was my intern, he just quit. He just left Hungary, he's in India, we have a person in the US who says, okay, we're going to do this, now what do we do? So I said, okay. So we did everything he learned everything on Skype over the phone. So this is an industry that I knew very little about. My aunt worked there, that's all that I really knew.
So this is the debt collection.
The debt collection. So basically
doctors.
We learned everything through the internet. And I remember our very first office. We moved to the very good location in Pune. It was in Pimpri. Now this is back in 2005. And for me, when I moved to Romania the first time in Bucharest, a very big key point was when they opened up the McDonald's near my house in Unieri. Well, when I moved to Pimpri, they opened the McDonald's up a year after I moved. There was no McDonald's there. And I'm not very good with Indian food because it doesn't stay inside my stomach.
It's not good for your palate.
So I used to have to drive into into Pune to get the food I wanted. So when McDonald's opened, I was very excited. So anyways, our first office there, Arvin picked it out, and we tried to, because when we set up BPP in Romania and so forth, in Hungary, one of the things that I remember was keep your costs down. And because all of our clients were in the US, they weren't going to see our office. So we looked at places in Corrigan Park, they were expensive, and then we decided to go to Pimpri because it was cheap. So our very first office was, I remember, it was 1,000, 1,200 square foot, and it was just a bare shell, just concrete. So what Arvin did is we got an office in the manager's cabin in the back, we put a wall on that, we still had concrete, we got the little dongles that used to plug into your computer to get internet, and he worked from there. And I just told Arvin, it's no big deal, it's fine.
That's what all businesses do.
When I saw the office, I go, oh my God, this is horrible, But I didn't say that. So anyways, we just plugged along, and eventually we went from, it was 3 people to start with, and we went to about 25 people. Then we actually got carpet, and we painted the office and had air conditioners. And then we actually got our client to fly over as well.
So once you've done the office up.
Once we did the office up, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know, for me certain threads are coming out. One is persistence, one is honesty, keep your costs down, and if it doesn't work, try again, try again.
Well, the first thing we had, Gladys was with my aunt, and
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this business. And the problem is, this business that we got into has an honest section and has a section that's very aggressive. Because we deal with work injuries. And sometimes people in California get injured for work. Your back really hurts because the lawyer tells you it really hurts, so you can try and get some money out of it. So sometimes these cases that people are going to doctors for are not so genuine. So our first client worked with doctors who were very aggressive. And actually what happened is she then hired some of our staff directly, and we actually closed our office. And then Arvin, basically, we had no business here in India. He helped me with the teaching. And I said, well, let's try it again. So now this is from India. He's never been in the US. I said, just get on the phone and just call people. So we just called people in our industry, and we got an investor in Arizona, and I met them when I went to the States to give us a chance. So we started again with a team of 5 people, and and then basically, from there, we grew again. And we had, what client was that? We had another client with us that gave us a chance in California. And we were with them for about a year, and then all of a sudden they said, we don't want you guys anymore. So we were now down to the second time we were going to almost close. I remember having a conversation with Arvin saying, Arvin, if there's no more business, then we have to close again. Then we had a lead, a guy named Abe, that was going to give us a chance. So I remember the most difficult thing that we had is we were on the phone saying, well, if Abe says yes, we've got to hire 15 people. If Abe says no, we've got to fire 5 people. So we'd go from a conversation from, well, we have to close the office next week, and then a couple hours later say, okay, if we have to hire these people, what are we going to do? I think it drove them crazy.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an extreme conversation to go from opening to closing.
But that's what entrepreneurship is about. You know, in the early days, those of you who have done it at least once, if not twice, will know that it is very much, you know, make or break.
I think what we really learned from that, the hard way, is diversify your clients as much as possible. Don't stop the marketing, because what we were trying to do is make this one client super happy, and the mistake was they'll never be super happy. You have to take a step back and say, at the end of the day, I have to have a couple of clients in case one pulls the plug. Because if you just rely on one client and they pull the plug, what do you have left? Nothing. And it happened to us a couple of times. So after Abe was going to pull the plug, so after Abe gave us a chance, then at that time we got a couple of clients. And what happens is that particular business person downsized, and we no longer work with them. But at that point in time, we had a diversified client. Now we're up to 51 people. And now we're going to be moving to the World Trade Center. The reason why I'm here this week is we're supposed to move on January 15th. But it's
To the World Trade Center.
to the World Trade Center in Karate. But it's not on the American time zone. And it's supposed to be, and nothing's
So
ready
when will
yet.
it be ready?
Well, we've changed the date till March.
Okay.
And I went to the World Trade Center today to tell them what I think. And I think it's resolved. We'll find out, but I won't let go.
Okay.
But the thing is really you don't want to just rely on that one revenue stream. It's a hard decision. You got to make sure that it's going reasonably well, but then you got to get at least a diversified client base, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't want one client to have you and then to start to manipulate.
And then once you get to a particular point where you've got a decent base of clients, then you can think about penetrating them more, trying to get more work out of them.
Exactly.
Yeah?
But diversify was, because we closed almost twice. We closed once, we were not diversified at all.
And so what that also tells you, I mean, you closed and then you effectively reopened because you re-looked at the market. You were forced to relook at the market.
Exactly.
And you saw that there were still opportunities, but doing things a different way. So I think one of the keys of being an entrepreneur is being able to read the market and know when you have to change your strategy. No matter how much you believe in your strategy, you do have to change it to match what
Exactly. I think another thing too that we didn't bring up yet is a lot of times in an entrepreneur you do it by yourself.
Yes.
And it can be very lonely, because when you're successful, your friends will tell you you're lucky. When you're struggling, they say, well, what's the big deal?
We had people, honestly, back in the day in Romania. Romania was well known for Dracula. Transylvania is in Romania, and orphans at that time, because there were a lot of abandoned kids, etc., etc. That's what Romania was known as. And I remember when I moved to Romania, all my mum and dad's friends were just like, Ushaji, what have you let her do? This is ridiculous. This is crazy. If she wanted to go abroad, she should have gone to Singapore or to America. And 3 years later, they all said I was a trailblazer. It's just amazing, that whole crazy to lucky.
It is. But I think the point here is, like my first business, I did it with Bandana. We had under emotional support. We were supposed to use my salary to support the business.
Which we did for 6 months.
Yeah. It was less than 6 months. It was like, I think it was immediate. Yeah, you forgot?
Sorry.
Old age, huh?
Old age. Yeah.
So at least when you're with someone else, you're in it together. Then when I went into with Arvin, at that time I had a very good salary, and I said, this time, I'm going to keep my position until the indie business is stable. So basically, I use my money to support Arvin, to get the business off the ground, and I did some marketing with him, etc. If you do it by yourself, which maybe some of you like.
So let's just ask that question. I'm just really interested. How many of you are entrepreneurs by yourself as opposed to having a co-entrepreneur? Just put your hand up. Okay, guys, honestly, and I think Kieran would probably back this up and advise, if you have someone else with you as a co-founder, it really, really, really helps. And I know there are struggles with that, and that's one of the things that you're going to hear about at TiEcon this year. We're going to be talking a lot about having strong support networks or ecosystems to be able to do it. So that was one of the things when there were always, in every business you did, even going back right to the beginning, it was you and your dad.
Exactly.
You know? The other one was a job, when you did the door-to-door selling, that was a job.
Correct.
More than entrepreneurship. But all the way through, you've always looked and had someone else.
And I also went into real estate in Romania, which we didn't talk about yet.
Yes.
Marshall, so...
So, Mike, you know, after the apartment success, obviously as entrepreneurs we start to think about other things. There was this time when he talked to me about Argentinian bonds. I can't remember what these bonds were, but every single market, every single television station on the planet was saying, do not buy these bonds because Argentina is going to default on them. And Mike was like, you know, I think this is a really good opportunity. And I was like, I am not investing. None of us are investing. You didn't.
I didn't buy them.
You didn't buy them, but you did invest in Romania in land.
In real estate, yeah.
In real estate, so...
But talking about that, when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, I bought the bonds just after they went bankrupt, and I got 3 times my money back. So sometimes it works.
Okay, fair enough.
So what happened in Romania is when they gave land back to the farmers or to the peasants, it was designed to be for farming. So if your dad had 20 kids, they would take his land up and break it into 20 pieces. And the way they broke it up was in strips. So every strip was 500 meters in length, but the width depended upon how many, kids there were. Some of these strips could be 1 meter, which is 1 row of corn. Some of them could be 10 meters. Now what the objective was is to buy all the strips, to glue them together, to rezone it from farming to build houses. And the problem is, if you want to do that, and one was to build a shopping center. If you miss any of those little pieces, you can't build a house if you have a hole in the middle of the house, right? So it was very stressful at times because you had to get all the pieces.
And to be fair, you invested in this before the crash,
Yeah.
didn't you?
This is 2002, 2003.
Yeah. And you've still got the land.
Still got it, yeah.
So there are some investments that you've seen go up, some that you've seen kind of go there, and some investments that you saw go right down. And that's the journey of entrepreneurship.
Well, I remember we got valuations at one point in time, and the valuer told us it was worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. And then after the crash, you're thinking it's worth nothing. And the problem is, as an entrepreneur, you're always overly optimistic.
Yes.
But sometimes when you get down, you're overly pessimistic, right?
Yeah.
So you can go from strength. That's why when you have a partner, it helps you have someone else to talk it through. Because I remember my friend saying, well, Mike, you have a lot of land, what's the big deal? Well, the problem is you can't take a piece of land to the restaurant to buy a meal. You got to sell it. And if the land you own is illiquid, because of all these complicated deals, it's these long, narrow strips and everything, it's stressful. And people don't get it. They say, well, you have all the land, what's the big deal? Yeah, but there's no cash.
Okay, so land, training, debt recovery services, BPO, there's no common theme between any of those apart from really entrepreneurship. If I could wave a wand and say, you know what, you could have done the corporate career and become partner of Deloitte, would you choose that route?
It's boring. I have friends that work for the big accounting firms that have great salaries and positions.
Just move your mic a bit.
But it's the most boring work, I think, to be in a big corporation where you cannot control your own destiny.
I mean, everything that I've done has been random. I moved to Romania. Why? Because of a voicemail to go to Russia. And then I went from Deloitte to Ernst & Young. Why? Because I thought maybe I can get some more money. I go to Vandana's house, lay on the floor, and end up setting up a training business. I set up a training business with Vandana. We get an email from a Mr. Rao. I meet an Arvind, and then I have a business in India doing outsourcing. I then meet Marshall and some of my friends in the States, and we decided to put a fund together to buy all of these pieces of land. So everything that I've done was what opportunities put in front of you, you just kind of like look at other opportunity and you just kind of think on the spot, be creative. And there's a lot of other things that I didn't do that I thought about, but I think how I did things is I just kind of like went with my instinct and looked at what opportunity I had in front of me. The land opportunity was in front of me because I was in Romania. Buying the apartment, because I rented it out, I go, this doesn't make sense.
So, are there any, out of all the decisions that you've made, are there any that you would, now with the benefit of hindsight, alter?
That's a tough question. Well, I don't think so. But what I remember is like all my projections, the financial projections. Remember the projections you did?
Oh, yes.
They had revenue that was a straight line, and expenses are just very small, and a huge profit at the end. And when Arvind did them for me in our business in India, they were the same thing.
And it's interesting because when we, at TiE, as charter members, we mentor other companies. And what's really interesting is that the majority that we've seen tends not to be positive. They tend to be overly cautious on revenue and overly optimistic on, overly cautious again on expenses. So there is a danger with that because perhaps you're not going to take those leaps of faith. Calculated leaps of faith.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, if I didn't do the things that I did, I wouldn't be where I am today. It's like, there's that great speech that Steve Jobs did in the university about the random walks of life. I went into a class just to look about how to do calligraphy, and that's how they came up with word art and all that sort of thing. So I don't regret anything that I've done. There were some things, obviously, that didn't go well. There were some decisions that at that time seemed good, but turned out to be crazy. Some of the real estate that I bought, I kicked myself, why did I get that? But at that point in time, it was probably the best decision
with the knowledge that you had at that time.
And of course, some of those decisions, you can kick yourself later, but that's life.
And I think that is the other thing. I think certainly from the entrepreneurs that both of us have worked with over the years, they end up kicking themselves a lot and giving themselves a really hard time about decisions that they've made. Every single success story that you hear of or you read about in the newspapers, you need to know that behind that is so many failures, so many situations where they think, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that, or I wish I hadn't done that. But those stories are very little reported. So I think that's one thing to also remember. Okay, so what do you think are the top 3 or 4 traits that a modern day entrepreneur needs to have?
Persistence, not to give up. Because it's so easy to get frustrated and to say, I've had enough. That to me is the most important one.
Co-founder?
Co-founder, just the positive attitude, because sometimes you really don't know what you're doing. I remember the first time that you do a big presentation when you're teaching, you just got to talk to yourself and just be ultra positive. Sometimes you have no idea what you're going to say, but you just have to be ultra positive. So I would say the attitude.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think it's much better to do it with someone else, because there's going to be a roller coaster ride. A big roller coaster ride. You're an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah.
And the roller coaster ride, sometimes, if you're on your own, I don't think I could have done it.
Yeah. I'd say that the last few years were really tough for me doing it by myself.
Yeah. So to me, definitely having a co-founder with me, a partner to do it with.
So persistence, a partner. The other thing that you said towards the beginning was fake it till you make it, and take risks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Richard Branson said once, say yes and figure out how to do it.
Yeah. Although there's probably a lot of corporations out there that would say, no, don't do that, because that's, you've got to know that you can put the team together, or you have the team to be able to come up with the solution. I think.
Exactly, yeah.
That's it. All right, I mean, I think I've covered what I wanted to cover with you. Let's open the floor to questions. Yeah.
Your talk was excellent.
Thank
You
you.
gave a spectrum of your life. And I have a few questions, very short. First is, US is structured, so you found it boring, number one.
Yes.
Second, when you were in Romania, was it the dictator Nicolas Ceausescu?
He went in '89. Didn't he?
89, yeah.
Yeah, so we were after that.
You're after Nicolas Ceausescu. And then third is your hard work in selling door-to-door books must have given you a lot of courage and confidence.
It
Is
did.
that- Yeah, because of your people saying yes, no, buying, even when you thought they may not buy. And that was one of the activities which you have already got. Now my question was, still you own something in Romania?
Yes, I do. I'm waiting for, well, I bought, the land has been rezoned,
Mm.
and I rezoned with the person next to me who's building 200 houses. So my idea is let them sell their houses first, because then the area is more valuable. So I'm just gonna let it sit and I'll exit later.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi Mike, Vandana. Thanks again for a very keeping it light and very humorous. Thank you. My question to you is: you traveled across the globe. You went to different places,
Yeah.
and as we know, at each of these geographies there are different kinds of risks. I mean, I will be very clear. I mean, did you not got scared of how the bylaws of that country, or how the maybe the people of that country, the culture of that country may or may not let you kind of take shape? I mean, did you face opposition, or the culture or the bylaws of the country didn't allow you? I mean, you might have invested in Romania, but something changes there, and that's a risk.
Well, so far I've been to 85 countries, and I think when I was in Romania, because I worked for Deloitte, I felt comfortable that it basically, it can't be that bad, and the properties in my name. When I came to India, I was very nervous, so what I did is I met Arvind, I trusted him, and because I had a local person who could take care of any of the, those kind of challenges, I had to trust in him. So my attitude was, in Romania I had the knowledge because I worked there. In India, I had someone I trusted. I wouldn't just go into a country that I didn't have any connections and set up a business by myself. That would make me a bit uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good evening, Mike and Vandana. I'm Saurabh Deshpande, and thank you very much for your wonderful talk. My question is, you talked about finding a co-founder. So how did you go about that process? Like, did you know the people? Like, were you friends with them? And to follow up on that, does being in a partnership, does it affect your friendship if you do?
That's a
become
good question. Well, first of all, when you have a partner, what people will tell you is you should get a proper agreement drawn up. We never did that. That one bit me a bit, because when BPP took over the company,
Yeah,
I got shafted there a little bit.
yeah.
When I did it with Arvind, we didn't really do any of these agreement things. So my attitude was, and I'm not sure if you would agree with this, is you find someone that you think you trust, go for it and have fun. Because if you do it by yourself and you fail, what's the difference anyways?
I think the one thing that I would add to that is when you find somebody, and I get your point about, how do you find that person? So we'll talk about that in a second. But when you find somebody that you trust, put in some kind of agreement, because you never know when things could go south or north. So I've learned that the hard way many times, unfortunately. Going to your second point though, about finding people.
Usually, well, for me, I think when I met Vandana, you can kind of tell when someone has that entrepreneurial spirit. You talk to people. Some people just don't connect at all. So when I was laying on Vandana's floor with her, fiance thinking, who's this crazy American guy? And you're talking about, let's try something. If someone, if you start having these conversations with late at night over a cup of coffee or over a beer, and you eventually will find that someone, if they really like the idea, you'll click. So we clicked on the idea. With Arvin, I clicked as well. So I think it's what I did is, who are the people that I know, and who are the people that have the adventurous spirit? Because if they're not an entrepreneur, they'll be a disaster as a partner.
That is a challenge. But you do need somebody who balances you, and I certainly see that with Arvin.
Yeah.
He balances you.
Yeah, he's more, yeah, definitely. And so are you, you're opposite of me in some ways, right?
Yeah, I was very risk averse. Very, very risk averse, so I would temper. Yeah. Going to your point on, how do you find one? I think that generally has been a challenge, hasn't it? I mean, when we were setting up Central and Eastern Europe, we were lucky because we either got ex-students, so we would have in a training business, so we would find anyone who was good as a student, as soon as they qualified, we'd say to them, would you like to come and work for us? Also, we actually recruited from our clients as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
So in the old days, there was Coopers and Lybrand instead of PricewaterhouseCoopers. And the training partner that we were dealing with came to us and said, I'd really like to work with you guys. And we said, okay, will you go to Slovakia and set up Slovakia? And he had the entrepreneurial bug. So he did it. So I think we were lucky, actually, don't you think?
Yeah. But if you pick a friend who's not an entrepreneur, a friend of mine I was in the States said, I want to go into business, what do you think? And if they have that risk-averse attitude and they're more of an employee-type person, it'll be a disaster as a partner. Because it's fine if you're making money. But there were nights when I had to move money around credit cards, how we're going to pay salaries, sleepless nights. And if the other person you have doesn't have that entrepreneurial spirit, they'll crack.
Absolutely.
So with us, there were many times when we didn't know how we were going to pay the bills. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I've had the same thing with Arvin. It's like, well, did the client pay yet? Oh no, what are we going to do? So my suggestion, when you do find that partner, if they're not a true entrepreneur, and you give them a sales pitch to work with you and be your partner, that's a disaster. They have to have that entrepreneurial spirit, because there's going to be times when things are going to be really bad, generally. And times when it's great. And when it's really bad, if it's a traditional employee, they'll say, I just got to get a job, I can't handle it.
In the interest, there were several of you that nodded that you would like to have co-founders or find people. One of the things that we're going to be doing at TiECon is people who register for TiECon, we're going to be asking what your major challenges are. And if you put that down as one of them, we're planning on having a board where you can put your bit up, like I'm looking for a co-founder in this particular area, so that other people can come and say, here's my number. So just really enriching the ecosystem, so consider that, because we know that it is a challenge. Yeah, thank you.
At present, you are running some coaching institute?
I train accountants all over the world.
From Nigeria to Kuala Lumpur and Ghana and yes. Sorry, let's.
Yeah. I had a follow-up question on the partnership side. I mean, you have been through talking about your partnership. You have been with a co-founder, and then the co-founder turning out to be your boss, and then he laying you off, and then you starting off something else again, right? I mean, so the question is more really on the individual side. Entrepreneurship is quite emotional as well. What was that one thing that set you still going and having all the other aspects of friendship and all things intact, and yet going ahead in your life of was it the entrepreneurial bug, or what exactly? I mean, what quality set you still going?
Well, I think when you're an entrepreneur, when you have a failure, you don't want to try again. I mean, I could have had a job, a stable job, etc. I think when the thing went wrong, I said, well, let's try it again. I mean, yeah, of course there were times it was back in 2000 when I got kicked out and I moved to Hungary. It was very frustrating, very difficult, because I was the initial founder.
Yeah.
But you just say, forget it, let's just try again.
He was amazing. I think one of the things as an entrepreneur, for Mike, I would say, is that he he did divorce. To a certain extent, you did divorce friendship from what happened in the business. You were willing to self-reflect, and of course there were times when you hated me, but I should say at this point, so the fiancé became an ex-fiancé, and I moved to Budapest. Mike and I, not in a romantic sense, but we actually shared a house. So after firing him and him moving to Hungary, we actually shared an apartment. It was a house, actually, a beautiful house, a massive house. So you were actually very unemotional in certain respects, or you got over it very quickly.
Or I hit it very well.
Oh, you did it very well. We've got to go for dinner tonight. No, we've talked about it many times since then. The other thing that I wanted to bring up to the same point is, it goes back to what Thomas Edison said when he invented the light bulb. This journalist had been chasing him and said, how does it feel to have failed, 1,000 times? And he said, I didn't fail 1,000 times, 10,000 times. I took 10,000 steps to succeed. So, and I think that's always been, an important part of your attitude.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi. So, Niranjan, there are two advices that you hear people giving to entrepreneurs, which seemingly conflict with each other. I'm not sure, I mean, that's how I say it. One is, we say persistence and never to give up, or never give up attitude. That sounds quite philosophical, because that's like infinity, persistence and never give up, until the caveats start coming in. Or persistence, then you got to decide, how far you want to go with this, and when you want to call your whatever, right?
That's a good point, when to give up.
Because we keep saying, persistence and never give up, and then pragmatism sets in, then what? And you got to decide how many years you're going to continue with this, and what you want to do, and all that. So,
Well, one thing, if you saw in the invite there's a quote they put in.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes, which I read to Arvin when we were going to close, I said, you always hear that winners never quit. You've heard that quote, right? And I said, that's nonsense. Winners know when to quit to move on to the next thing. So when I say persistence, I don't mean persistence in doing the same thing forever.
Yeah.
I mean persistence in saying, okay, I got to give this one up, what's the next thing? So it's persistence of keep doing something, and being able to also decide when I need to quit the first thing. So
Good point.
So that's what I meant by persist. I don't mean I'm going to open up a restaurant and no matter what happens, I'm going to keep on going. If it doesn't work, maybe I need to rethink and change it and change into a different direction.
Good evening, everyone. So my particular dilemma is that I'm actually trying to find a co-founder, and I know someone from my family who kind of can fit it into the whole concept. But the dilemma is, my philosophy is that I don't want to mix family and business together, because I think that neither of them can go for a toss once things really start going, bad. So is it like one thing is right that you should find a co-founder outside your family or in your family? Like, is it that there is some sort of preference towards one particular case than the other?
Well, I have some interesting views on that. People always ask why we chose Pune, because Arvind is from Hyderabad. And when we started to set up the business, what I was concerned about, because Indian families obviously get very involved with your life, right? And the reason why we picked Pune is because he was close enough to see his family and far enough away where they couldn't get involved in our business. So my view is, it's different if it's your son and you're going to hand on to or your dad. When you start going out, sometimes family is, you have a connection there from love and from your relationship with the family, but they might not be entrepreneurs. So to me, the best partner has to be an entrepreneur. And usually, if it's your kids and you raise them up, they will become like their father, maybe become an entrepreneur. But if it's an extended family or an uncle or an aunt, and it's just because they happen to want to try something, I would say to avoid it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've got personal experience on another side that we won't go into. But yeah, I think it is. I think it's a challenge, and I think it is to do with the maturity level of the other person as well, and how unemotional they can be. I think, Kieran, you gave a brilliant point earlier. I'll just hand over to our president.
Just a question. I think listening to all that, a couple of I think there is instinct and a gut feel, and not the analytics. For example, if you set yourself a process of finding a co-founder and all that, and go about it in a very methodical way, you may not find one, but you may find someone, and sometimes you have to trust those instincts that a co-founder might be around, but you don't see that. It's very important. I think that's what I think other thing I see, Vandana and Mike and all of this is sensing the opportunity when others don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I think that's a very important one. When I've come to sometimes, it could be a wrong way to look at it, but if a lot of people are telling me it's not good, I always ask, I think there's something people haven't understood, let me go and try it out. So I think that sort of comes out that you've tried so many things, and you sort of let the system or the environment that you'll be able to figure it out. With all that variety that you talked about, in places where people will ask 10,000 questions, should I or should I not? And let's go try it out and see what happens. So, great.
Great. So I have to say it was just amazing, Mike. It was so great to hear and really delve into what makes you the entrepreneur that you are. Hopefully it's given you all some insights. Have you taken something away? Yeah? That's I think the beauty of TiE. It's not just a conversation, but we're here to really draw out those points and give you something. So thank you so much for sharing that amazing journey, and hopefully we'll take away some of the things that you said. I'd really like to thank Kiran, our president, for being here today and doing the introduction, welcoming everyone. I'd like to very much thank the audience for being here today and listening to Mike's, I feel, quite amazing story. And again, I just want to say my personal thanks, because really without you, I don't think I would have learned about entrepreneurship. I would never have done it. I would never have learned about networking. He was the one who initially pushed me out into networking and made me what I'm often referred to, which is the networking queen. So I have a lot to thank you for, so personal big thanks from my side as well.